marriage like, I am going to be. My husband is never, ever, ever going to look at anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, I am just a realist in a lot of ways. I know what it's been like for me, right? When I first came to Hollywood and I could go into the clubs and have anybody, just the level of just like, like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
it's intoxicating.
It's so intoxicating. That's one. Now, what I do believe that what people don't know that I talk about in the book a lot is that there have been several breakups between Will and I. Will talks about it, my 40th birthday, which was a big breakup for us. We were actually looking towards separating and divorcing. And we separated. The world just didn't know. Then we had a reconciliation. And then 2016 came and we had the ultimate break. But the world didn't know. And I think that that's where some of the misconception about having an open marriage came into play, because we were living lives as single people and the world didn't know. Over the span of 12 years of just trying to figure out this thing called love and marriage between Will and I, it's been a trip. And I think that even with that entanglement piece, which I talk about extensively in the book, how I played a part in the misconception of that narrative of allowing myself to be portrayed as an adulteress, allowing myself to be portrayed as someone that had betrayed Will. And that wasn't the case. We broke up in 2016. He went on to live a life as a single man. I went on to live a life as a single woman. And then when we had the talk at the red table, I was going to go to the red table by myself.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
Can we go back? I have a mouthful of ice cubes.
I think you got chaw.
Okay. Chase, what do you got?
I think I'm confident here saying that there's a pattern with her using the word right. And she uses that word the moment she's bringing up a topic which she thinks could incur some form of judgment or criticism. So there's some social buy-in from the interviewer. When someone doesn't use this word often, pay attention when they use it, and you'll start to see the exact situations that make them feel like they need backup or social backup. This can tell you a lot more about their psychology than you might imagine. There's a slight smile at the word breakups here, which I thought was really bizarre. And I think some people might misinterpret this as being happy about the breakup, but with how fast it comes on to her face, and secondly, how she makes brief eye contact while she's smiling, this is what's called social confirmation smile, or maybe another word for it. But we use this to make sure somebody else is comfortable and that they're still with us in the conversation. And there's a hand gesture she's doing here. Mark picks up on these so much that hopefully I'm taking something away from what he's about to tell you.
Get ready to cross it out.
There's a hand gesture where she's flipping over a document like this, and then moving the document closer and then further away from somebody with her hand here. This is unusual for her. So I wanted to pay attention. And there might have been some document involved with this process she's talking about, like maybe a divorce decree, a prenup, or, whatever. I only say this because of her baseline. She's known to illustrate and narrate when she's being truthful. And she does this in a way that she's interacting with an object, which she does all the time. So 2 incredible pieces of advice that I got from my late grandfather growing up was, number 1, you have to love your person more than you need them. That's a big deal to understand that. You have to love them more than you need them, because when that scale tips, you're in for a huge disaster. And 2, only get mad one person at a time. All the behavior that I'm seeing here looks like the same unusualness that we see when we see Kamala Harris ever talking on any camera ever. It's the same kind of behavior as you see with Kamala Harris. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, it could be a document that she could be turning on the gas cooker. I don't know. Could be one or the other. Well, certainly, look, it is a what I've put as a broad performance around this idea of the intoxicating nature of being able to have anyone. Her hand comes right up into the ecstatic plane, so she's getting really excited by that. And I believe her. I mean, when you're right, Chase, when she gets more animated, it's more true, I would say, to a trained dancer who is being really expressive. And I believe every moment of that, because her body, really fills, and all the lines of energy complete. There's nothing flaccid in there. It's quite exciting to watch. We can see a really good physical performer there for sure. And contrast that to when she talks about other stuff that she wants to be more obscure and closed around, and she's barriered. So when we see her cross-legged and what are traditionally people might say, she's barriered, but we could easily go, actually, well, it kind of looks like her baseline, and that might be true. But look what happens when she's excited about something and she becomes a really good, honest storyteller, or certainly maybe not honest, but more expressive storyteller, because she's got clear detail and she wants to get it out. Well, she's big, she's bold, which is great to see. I just picked up on the idea of her talking about love and marriage. It's a classic Sinatra phrase, and it just reminded me she used lyrics of I'll Be There when she was talking about being there for Will. And it seems to me, talking about romanticism, Chase, often when we're being romantic about something, we use, popular culture or poetry to explain our lives, because, often we haven't experienced the panoply of life, but poets try and artists try and give us what it would be like by creating songs and lyrics and pictures. And so when we're living a situation, we'll often talk about it in the poetry of the artists, because it's the nearest thing we have. So we get love and marriage, the Sinatra, and I'll Be There. I don't think she's using it in the Michael Jackson sense, because she puts her stress on the there rather than the I'll. Anyway, she talks in classic lyrics. She is a romanticist, I would say. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I'm just going to cover a couple of things. One is pay attention to what she's talking about when she does this whole move. It's something I call the let me tell you move, not the teaching face thing, the let me tell you move. You see people narrow and purse their lips. They half swallow when they're talking. They may chew the inside of their mouth. They have their head tilted down and they're rocking their head as they're telling you. They may be doing this or that, but they're telling you something and they're looking down at you. Pay attention to that, because that's a let me tell you. And that's a little bit of a patronizing move when they're doing that. You see people chewing their mouth when they do it as well. That's one. The second one is when she's talking about positive things about herself, she's large and she's in active voice. Go to the pub, to the bar, have my pick. She's saying these words not like they happen to her, but like their actions, and she has some control. When she gets to the bad things around going to the red table, she goes to passive voice. Played a part, allowing myself to be portrayed. And then she does that weird adapter where she grabs her leg at going to the red table by myself. Look, this thing's filmed. I think this was a pretty big series and recorded, and it was something she could have said, well, that episode's never going to see the light of day, because it was in her house. Her studio was in her house. So she has a little more editorial control than she's letting on here. She's a victim by this. She shifted gears and went to that whole passive voice. Not a real big fan of that. Scott, what do you got?
All right, so they recorded this in her house? That's her place?
Yeah, the red table was done in their house.
Yeah, not this interview.
Yeah. Not this one. Okay.
Yeah.
No, the red table. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, in this clip, this is the most animated she gets when she's talking about how famous she is and how she could have her choice of anybody in the club. Let me give you a little secret here. If you're a woman You can go to any club and have any guy you want in there. Just so you know, that's on the table. That's on Scott's beige table. Take that with you and do with it what you will. But know that is a fact. Now, notice when she talks about herself, she's either really loud or she gets really quiet with that head down a little bit. And then she uses that voice where she sounds like she's just come off the mountain with a tete-a-tete with a burning bush, and she's come down to hip the cattle to the way things are and about her. And it's just mind-blowing, the self-absorption that must have gone on before this to be able to let that out of your mouth, some of the things she's talking about. However, these are all cues of confidence. Some may say overconfidence or super confident, but for some reason it's not playing right. It just doesn't sound or look right. But these are all the things you see in a confident person. That's the things a lot of these things are things we train people to look like when they're going in to whatever the situation is, to look confident. A lot of this is what that is. But for some reason, maybe it's what's coming out of her mouth that's making those things clash together. What's coming off her from her body language and what she's actually saying. Maybe those are clashing, and that's what it is. I don't know, but they're all cues of confidence. And like Greg was saying, she's. It's not the I'm teaching you something as much as it is what was the phrase you used, Greg?
Listen to me. Yeah.
Yeah, the listen to me. So
let me tell you, listen to me, is the one I would usually use when people.
Let me tell you. So that I think that's what's happening now. I've just slammed her so bad, but let me tell you something. This is something that I'll have to tell you since I've been talking so bad about her. When we go do Dr. Phil's show, we have someone that will come pick us up, right? And so one of these times I was there by myself, and the driver came pick me up. And there's two questions I always ask. The first one is, who's the nicest person you've had to drive, that you've gotten to drive for? Who's the nicest person? Who's the best one? And I've had two people tell me Shaquille O'Neal's the nicest one. Oh, they say that guy. This one guy told me, he said, look, I won't use his name, but he said, when we go somewhere, we go to these really nice restaurants and I drop him off, he says, what do you want? And even when he says, I don't want anything, he sends the waiter out and he says, he told me I have to take something. You have to tell me what you want to eat or I can't go back in there. And so he tells them what he wants to eat, and they bring out this big layout for him to eat, the driver. And I thought that was so cool. Now, having said that, I said, who's the worst? And one of them said, Will Smith is the worst. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, what makes him the worst? And he said, he when he gets in the car, he never says hello, never says anything, doesn't address me. And then when he needs something, he just keeps looking down and says, get my bags or do this or do whatever. And when we get out of the car, we always sort of open the door and get out ourselves. He waits for the guy to come around and let him out of the door. Nothing wrong. Some people are like that. And he said, however, the one thing that good that came out of that was his wife, Jada. He said, she is so nice and she is always so pleasant to me. She is the nicest person. Every time I've driven for them, she comes out and apologizes for the way he acts once he's in. And I said, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. He said, no, she is the sweetest thing. He said, I really like her a lot. So there's that. The juxtaposition of that as to what we're seeing. I don't know what's happening. I hope I don't get that guy in trouble. Should I put that story in or not?
I don't know, but I love it that we're now a Hollywood gossip channel.
That's true. That's what that's turning into.
Like we're now OK Magazine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with
nothing
that.
wrong with that story.
Yeah.
No, it's funny.
We're OK Magazine. We're heat. We're now heat.
How would they know it's him? There's 1,000 drivers in LA.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is that all of us?
Yeah.
One of those tape replays.
Marriage, like, I am going to be. My husband is never, ever, ever going to look at anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, I am just a realist in a lot of ways. I know what it's been like for me. Right? When I first came to Hollywood and I could go into the clubs and have anybody, just the level of just like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
intoxicating.
It's so intoxicating. That's one. Now, what I do believe that what people don't know that I talk about in the book a lot is that there have been several breakups between Will and I. Will talks about it, my 40th birthday, which was a big breakup for us. We were actually looking towards separating and divorcing. And we separated. The world just didn't know. Then we had a reconciliation. And then 2016 came, and we had the ultimate break. But the world didn't know. And I think that that's where some of the misconception about having an open marriage came into play, because we were living lives as single people, and the world didn't know. Over the span of 12 years of just trying to figure out this thing called love and marriage between Will and I, it's been a trip. And I think that even with that entanglement piece, which I talk about extensively in the book, how I played a part in the misconception of that narrative of allowing myself to be portrayed as an adulteress, allowing myself to be portrayed as someone that had betrayed Will. And that wasn't the case. We broke up in 2016. He went on to live a life as a single man. I went on to live a life as a single woman. And then when we had the talk at the red table, I was going to go to the red table by myself.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.